All right. Welcome all to CLEAResult's webinar, Electric Vehicles Rising to the Demand for Shared Charging Solutions. I'm James Russell. I'm CLEAResult's Director of Transportation Electrification. I'm very happy to be here today and happy to have you all joining us. We've got a good crowd, and so I'd like to go ahead and jump on in. All right, so today I will give a quick introduction of our panel, give an overview of the challenge and opportunity, then turn it over to our guest today, Tucson Electric Power, to talk about their strategic insights on this challenge. And we'll discuss our CLEAResult approach to supporting program delivery, and should have a good amount of time at the end for your questions and some discussion. All right, I am very pleased today to be joined by this panel who can really speak to all facets of shared charging program delivery. We have Camila Martins-Becat from Tucson Electric Power, who is a leader in EV program strategy and community engagement, myself, of course. And then from our delivery team, Varun Thakar, a senior analyst for electric vehicles who combines both technical and soft skills to help customers get through to a successful shared charging deployment. And Steve Brennan, our engineering manager, who is responsible for developing the tools and procedures that we use for shared charging assessments and deployment support. And if you get a moment with him, you can ask him about his previous days working on the EV1. Quite interesting. Thank you to this entire panel for being here today. All right, so today in the US, we're at about 2% electric vehicle sales share, and in Canada, climbing towards 4%. Of course, regionally, some states and provinces are already well beyond that, and are even now sort of doubling down with policies, mandates for zero-emission vehicles. With those types of policies in place and the increasing variety of vehicles available on the market, some at more accessible price points, many sources are now predicting a 10 to 15-fold increase in the electric vehicle sales by 2030. So there that's EV adoption increasing everywhere. And in some regions, EVs becoming the dominant new vehicle technology sold. So that's possible. And I would say it's even likely if our industry throws our weight behind the transition. And I'm sure many of you are already doing that with enthusiasm, and perhaps some with a bit of trepidation that I think is only natural when we're talking about such a massive shift in our energy system. By my rough estimate, that's what we're talking about is akin to increasing the electric vehicle charging energy demand to more than 100 billion kilowatt hours annually in North America during that relatively short time frame. And while it's not unprecedented from a historical load growth standpoint, it is certainly a very significant shift from the recent trend line. And also, like many of the demands now being placed on our electric grid, there's an increased variability in this load, really unlike anything else. It shows up over here at 6 kilowatts, and then it shows up over there at 50 kilowatts or more. So as we approach shared charging deployment, we do that first with that primary focus of scaling up quickly the charging infrastructure so everybody has access, and to encourage and accelerate EV adoption, while also doing so in an intelligent way that makes sure we are making the best use of infrastructure. And so as we are making this major, many billion-dollar investment, we are doing so in a way that makes the grid smarter and more resilient, and at the same time lowers customers' total annual energy cost. With that approach, we will ensure that everyone benefits from this tremendous transformation in the way we are powering transportation. And with that, I would like to turn it over to Camila to speak to TEP's strategy for capturing this opportunity.
Good morning, everybody. Next slide, please. My name is Camila Martins-Beckott, and I'm a Senior Market Development Representative for Tucson Electric Power. James, I really appreciated your introduction, which kind of hits on all of the points that I had for my first slide. And I will say that personally, I hope that I am doing this enthusiastically and intelligently. So when TEP embarked on this kind of journey that we're on transportation electrification, we really viewed it from a win-win-win for customers, utility, and society. Right, and James, you touched upon this, right? Like the lower total cost of ownership in terms of vehicles, an improved experience, helping our customers meet their sustainability goals. From a utility perspective, right, this is where the intelligent investment piece comes in. We want to make sure that our investments are prudent and that they make sense for now and into the near future. We want to make sure that we improve our customer satisfaction through the experience and the offerings that we have. And of course, the win for society, right? Cleaner air, reduced greenhouse gas emissions, and economic growth and job creation through the development of a new technology sector. So our approach has been really to be a leader in Southern Arizona's effort to electrify transportation for a cleaner and more sustainable community. And the mission that kind of drives that for us is really through collaboration, promotion, education, and all of these opportunity areas that we have are guided by our principles of leading by example, which we do with transitioning our own fleet to electric vehicles, empowering customers, right, giving them the right information at the right time so that they are able to take informed action, make informed actions. And of course, we want to balance the economic impacts, and this kind of goes back to the prudent investment piece. And of course, we want to support the environmental and health benefits of transportation electrification. So a little bit more on our guiding principles, right? I kind of touched on them in the previous slide, but really for the leading by example, right? We are our best advocates for transportation electrification. If we can show our customers that we're committed to transportation electrification, they will see that we are an example to follow. And that helps us really build relationships and partnerships with key customers. For empowering customers, like I said, we wanted to develop a suite of options for our customers, including some self-service tools, as well as some tools that we can provide for specific customers. And in balancing the economic impacts, right, it really kind of boils down to making sure that charging infrastructure is accessible, that the investments are prudent, and that they enable transportation electrification in a sustainable way. And of course, for supporting the environment, right, it closely aligns with our IRP, which is calling for us to transition to 70% renewable energy by 2035. So that, coupled with transportation electrification, hits that guiding principle pretty solidly. Right, so for the opportunity areas that we saw, and we're really looking to take EV adoption in our service territory from what is right around 4,000 vehicles to well above 50,000 vehicles by 2035. And the opportunity areas that we've identified around that is driving partnerships and collaboration. And we started this off with some kind of ad hoc presentations to some key customers that then kind of transitioned into some more formal projects that helped inform what is now our EV commercial program. Driving supportive policies and incentives. So those are policies that regulate us as a utility, but also policies in and around this cities and jurisdictions in which we serve. So we work closely with the city of Tucson and Pima County in and around their policies around climate change. Driving consumer awareness and education. This is a massively important piece, right? We need to provide our customers with information that meets them where they're at and also helps them take the next step. And so we have a series of tools and resources that our customers have access to. And of course, you know, any one of our team members are also very accessible to our customers if they have any questions. And driving infrastructure deployment. So we understand that a lot of the barriers in and around transportation electrification stem from the perception actually that there isn't sufficient charging infrastructure. And so when we developed our programs, we had that particular aspect in mind, and also decided to undertake a particular project that would bring some DC fast charging to downtown Tucson. While I'd like to say that our transportation electrification journey has been a straight line with 0 speed bumps, that would be, you know, incorrect, because we have had some twists and turns and we've had to pivot along the way. And so, for example, I mentioned that we had started by engaging our local customers, and we engaged the city of Tucson and Pima County early on to identify the size of the opportunity, right? Had they started thinking about transportation electrification? Did they have a particular plan? Did they have a policy mandate that they were looking to develop? And at the same time, we started engaging with some key industry organizations, such as the Alliance for Transportation Electrification and EEI. From there, those presentations to our key customers, like I mentioned, they kind of blossomed into these pilot projects. And some of the ones that I will highlight are work with our transit agency in their efforts to electrify their bus fleet. We partnered with them on some federal funding, some low and no emissions grants for electric buses. We started with 1, we now have 10, and we are not stopping there, right? They are going to continue to go for funding, and we are looking forward to continuing the partnership with them as they continue to electrify. And from our local governments, we transitioned into some private sector businesses and additional departments within the city of Tucson. So we had conversations with the Tucson Police Department in and around where could they start electrification, right? Like they knew that they couldn't start with their squad cars. And so what other programs are run out of the police department that we can kind of identify as perfect opportunities for transportation electrification. And in doing so, taking them through that journey of how do you get to all of your vehicles being electrified. We also engaged in the development of our EV roadmap, right? So this roadmap, which is guided by those principles that I just went over a few slides ago, outlines 48 different initiatives that we're trying to undertake over the next 5 years to ensure that we drive adoption and reduce the barriers to transportation electrification. We engaged also in a statewide planning effort, which is wrapping up now. And from there, we'll gather some additional insights as how to develop and build new programs and even make modifications to some existing ones. And of course, we launched our residential and commercial program. We did launch our commercial program right as COVID hit, and we expected some slow uptake in interest, but lo and behold, it's been quite the journey. And so we do all these things right with the ultimate goal of arriving at a smart community that is sustainable, not only in the aspect of our investments, but also in the aspect of environmental. Next slide. Okay, so a little bit about our smart EV charging program. So the goal for the program between 2020 and 2021 is to activate 360 ports. And the strategy in and around that was, of course, early adopters and to address 2 main barriers. One, of course, is the cost barrier, and then also the education piece. And so bringing in an implementation contractor such as CLEAResult to really help us educate our customers, provide them with that guidance throughout the entire process. And, you know, it's okay that it's a rather high touch point program, because that is the type of service that our customers are expecting from us, and they want that personalized approach. And that's definitely how we've developed the program. Next slide. So the way that our program is laid out, right, we have a couple of different use cases, and we have different rebate incentives for each of those use cases. And we also provide some additional financial consideration if the project is located in a disadvantaged or low income area. And again, you know, trying to get to those two barriers, the education piece and the financial piece. And as we were developing this program, we really wanted to ensure that we covered the startup to operation costs and make those eligible project costs. And so you can see there on the right-hand side, right? So eligible project costs include electrical service upgrades, design and engineering, construction installation, but also the service warranty and O&M agreements. We do require our customers to be on a time of use rate and to sign a 3-year operating agreement with us. But again, I think all of our customers so far have been willing participants in that aspect, because they do see this as a long-term strategy and not something that is just a one and done. Next slide. So now I'll pass it over to Varun he'll get into a little bit more of the details. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Camila. Nick, can you hear and see me okay?
Roger that, looking great.
Awesome. So thanks, Camila, for outlining the strategy behind the program. I'm going to speak to CLEAResult's approach to implementation of shared EV charging programs. And then Steve is going to do a deeper dive on our site assessment approach. Next slide. So these are the key customer segments that we wanted to engage with via the Smart EV charging program. CLEAResult has developed and continues to refine project scope templates that meet these customer segments' typical end use cases, as well as ways to collaborate with TEP on the typical infrastructure found at the facilities of different customer segments, as you'll see in some of the slides that follow. Next slide. So this illustration is an example of the end-to-end support we provide for EV projects. Our approach consists of targeted marketing and outreach and a streamlined customer portal, which helps the program identify and onboard interested businesses and key stakeholders. We then conduct a site assessment to understand the customer's existing physical and electrical infrastructure, and work with the customer to design a project scope that optimizes existing infrastructure to meet the customer's end use case within program parameters. Once the project scope is approved by the client, we support the customer in their contracting process by providing our pre-vetted list of qualified charger vendors and trade allies. Customer satisfaction on this program is extremely important for TEP, and we try to make the process as seamless as possible for customers. And then once the project is installed, CLEAResult inspects and pays out projects in a manner similar to our CNI programs. Next slide, please. Excuse me. So given the new nature of this program for TEP and its customers, we implemented our easy-to-use customer portal to intake project applications and manage the workflow of projects. The portal has 2 stages for projects. The first is focused on intaking customer applications and providing them with real-time program information and feedback on whether they qualify. The second focuses on managing the workflow of qualified projects with tailored customer, client, and program interfaces. Next slide, please. So when creating a project scope for an EV charging project, it is essential to assess the nearby infrastructure up and downstream of the customer's meter. Steve is going to go into details on our approach to assessing a customer's infrastructure downstream of the meter. And over the next few slides, I will speak to our work on assessing the ability of our client's infrastructure to support projects. So it is true for TEP, as it is for most utilities, that their distribution planning department tends to be resource constrained. And working on issues around distribution planning can be critical to successful design of EV projects. So in order to address this resource constraint, TEP created a view for us to leverage excuse me, their GIS system. So we can see infrastructure such as meters, distributed generation systems, transformers, and feeders, and determine available capacity to support projects. This approach has led to multiple process efficiencies, and the virtual access to information it has given us has also played a key role in our ability to launch and grow the program during the pandemic, as Camila mentioned. And this screenshot is a view of TEP's downtown headquarters. You can see some of the transformers, the solar array, and the meter, amongst many other infrastructure aspects through that GIS system. Next slide, please. Excuse me. So I'm going to quickly speak to a couple of examples of how we design projects to meet customer needs while limiting unnecessary system upgrades and ratepayer costs. This project was for an HOA located in a fairly isolated part of TEP's T&D system, and the development has grown larger than originally expected as well. The HOA has a high level of focus on sustainability, and you can actually see it's pretty small on the screen, but you can see they have several solar systems visible in the GIS system. There's essentially one line going into a loop to support the entire development's electrical infrastructure. Excuse me. And as we've observed in most multifamily developments, transformers tend to be small and dispersed throughout the property. They typically need to be upgraded to support EV projects. And in this case, the customer wanted 6 charging ports to support their rapidly electrifying pool of cars. So in order to meet the customer's needs without requiring a very challenging and expensive system upgrade, we worked with TEP's design build team to facilitate a nominal 25 kVA upgrade to the transformer that is located nearest to the charging location. And then we worked with vendors and trade allies to scope a load sharing charging configuration that would be able to support 6 ports on that limited increase in capacity. Next slide, please. So this municipal fleet project faced similar issues as the last, but on a much larger scale. So Pima County is actually committed to converting their fleet of around 300 cars to EVs over the next 3 to 5 years. And as a result, they need to build multiple charging depots at their facilities to support that transition. This project, located at one of their downtown garages, was originally scoped to be 20 chargers, supported by a new service from the transformer adjacent to the building. Again, it's pretty small, but you can kind of see it in the GIS capture. But then Pima County came back to the program with a request to double the size of the project, which would potentially require an upgrade of the transformer. So in order to address this without, again, incurring unnecessary cost, we worked with the county to understand their fleet's charging needs, and were able to design a load sharing configuration that kind of maximized the throughput of the chargers without requiring the upgrade of the transformer. Next slide, please. So this is another, collaborating with TEP's ops team on the customer load analysis workflow is another unique and innovative collaboration being implemented on this program. Since all customers receiving an incentive through the program are required to be on a time of use rate, we work on a rate and load analysis of the customer's site to determine if an existing service connected or new service project is the best fit. and that's done for every project. And in some limited cases, we also implement the use of a sub-meter. It's a pretty involved process, and there's been a lot of learning along the way. So it's been a great learning process as well. Next slide. All right, I'm going to hand it off to Steve to speak to CLEAResult site assessment approach.
Thanks, Arun. Hello, everyone. My name is Steve Brennan, and I'm going to speak about the site assessment process that we use here at CLEAResult. The process includes an analysis of the service and system characteristics, so voltage, phase, amps, etc., the availability or the available utility transformer capacity, physical and electrical capacity of the panel, and how many chargers the owner wants, their desired locations, the panel and sub-panel locations in relation to desired charger placements, and the potential pathways from the desired EVSE locations back to the panels. Now, these items are documented through phone calls and site visits, then entered into our load study tool. The table on this slide shows the output of this tool that calculates the potential EVSE counts based on available electrical capacity. This is going to be limited either by the transformer, the utility transformer, the service size, or the panel. The limitations of the service or panel are not absolute, but we try to avoid expensive upgrades where possible. So we try to make the solutions fit within the available capacity. Now, the photo on this slide shows a typical commercial switchgear with available breaker slots. They're circled in red on the right. We hope to find this on all the sites. We don't always. And the schematic on the lower right shows the typical proposed layout of an EVSE scenario for review by the owner, including the ADA requirements, the panel placements, EVSE placements, and the conduit pathways. Next slide, please. In certain programs, we use multiple scenarios to demonstrate to the site owner the cost implications of increasing both port counts and incentives. So the tool is designed for up to 3 different project scopes or solutions. The engineer builds the proposed system scenarios pipe by pipe, wire by wire into a financial estimation tool, which yields both the cost breakdowns as shown in the solution bar chart on the right and the scenario cost comparison as shown in the table. Now, the scenarios or solutions in the table are designed to show costs for 3 typical solutions. One would be what the owner said they wanted. So that might be solution 1. The next might be an optimized solution from our engineering team, where we're trying to weigh the number of ports versus the incentives to get the best bang for your buck, the best cost per port. And then the maximized solution in column 3 would show maximization for future needs. Lots of make ready for when EVSE or EVs are more widely adopted. Now, the bar chart represents the breakdown by charger type for one scenario. So that just represents one of the scenarios, say the first column. It's more of an engineering tool than something we present to the site owners, but it helps us see where the money's going on a particular solution. In addition to the cost comparison table and the breakdown charts, which you see on the slide, the other outputs from the load study tool include revenue operating models, infrastructure upgrade summaries, and parking evaluations for each scenario. Lost sites, lost parking spaces to handicap, to ADA upgrades, etc. Now, every effort, as mentioned before, every effort is made to keep the scenarios within the available capacity of the utility service in the main panel, but the upgrades can't always be avoided. So the tool will include them in the project costs when we do have to include a service upgrade, a transformer upgrade, etc. Next slide, please. Now, once the potential solutions are identified and the costs calculated, the information is presented to the property owner for them to select their preferred solution. The presentation of the solutions to the owners follow these 3 principles. Keep it simple with the supporting detail available, so you'll have schematics, etc. Encourage consideration of future needs, make ready or more ports than they probably first asked for, and make it easy to take the next step to request bids. So we try to include as much information as we can so that they can go out and request bids. So now I'd like to pass this back to James to wrap things up.
Great, thank you. Now that we've taken you from the strategy all the way down into the details of delivery, I want to just pop back up a level to illustrate how we're using that on-the-ground experience and kind of a process of continuous optimization of the delivery. So first, I have here an example of an analysis we did to determine the optimal amount of automated load management to recommend for a multifamily site. You may recall Varun mentioned using automated load management. For those of you who aren't familiar with this technology, what we're talking about is networked chargers deployed to one site that communicate with each other. So when one vehicle is charging, all the power of a given capacity limit can go to that charger. But when multiple vehicles are charging, the chargers communicate to each other and collectively scale back their delivery so that we still remain within that overall capacity limit. So as we found that to be a frequently applicable solution to multifamily sites, we realized we needed to take a rigorous approach to determining how many chargers we should group together within one capacity limit. And so to cut a long story short, we analyzed thousands of commute data for thousands of multifamily households and the billions of combinations that you get when you consider how those households might and their commute needs might combine. And out of that analysis, we feel very confident in saying that grouping 3 chargers together within a set capacity is almost always a good solution. It works in nearly all the cases. You see, maybe 1% of households, don't get a full charge overnight. And even if you can go to groups of 4, if that satisfies your capacity constraint, and still in most all cases, that's going to work out fine. If you go to 5, it starts to get pretty spotty. So 3 or 4 is currently what we are recommending. And this last example illustrates the sort of analysis and reporting that we can do as we first upfront set the right expectations about sharing charging data and flowing that data into a central database. And then we analyze that data. And obviously you see that we can do things like break down load profiles by site type, understand how much of the total charging energy is being delivered to which vehicle types. And at the bottom here, see how that trend of vehicle charging by site type is changing over time. And of course, this past year had a lot of unexpected changes in it, and you see some pretty big shifts happening towards the end of Q1 of last year. So, really fun and interesting if you're a data nerd like myself, but also, satisfies all of those fundamental reporting and transparency needs that any program like this is going to have. And even more so, I think, is essential information that we all need to plan the next generation of charging programs. Obviously, with this kind of data, we can start to get insights like, looking in this geographic area, we can see the chargers are extremely highly utilized. So perhaps that's where we need to focus on deploying the next group of chargers. Or, perhaps the load profile for this type of site is looking particularly problematic from a, energy supply cost perspective. So that's where that type of site is where we want to begin targeting the managed charging program of the future. So that's just a glimpse of the opportunities, I think, but like everything our panel has shared, I hope it gives you some good food for thought as you embark on your own shared charging programs. I think that's a great note to end on. And again, I want to thank the panel so much, like really great sharing of insights today. Appreciate it, and appreciate all of our audience for joining today. And feel free to, hit us offline if you have follow-up questions, and we'll do our best to respond. Thanks to everyone. Have a great day.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.